Hello. Welcome to Season 8 of The Horrific Podcast. We're two friends who live in different places but share a love for scary movies. In each episode, we both watch the same movie on our own and then record a conversation together about what we liked, what we hated, if we were scared, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. This season, our theme is Make the Wives Pick. Since our wives have to watch these movies with us every week, and often complain about it, we made them pick the movies this season. If you want to see the list of upcoming films and follow along, check out our website at thehorrific.com. Thanks for listening. So we are currently elbow deep in Season 8.
Yep.
And the theme this time around is that we let our wives make a list of movies for us to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Because they usually complain about, the movies that we have picked in the past. Which really, after we did that Esquire's list of the 50 scariest movies of all time, which was terrible, they're kind of right to complain. But we flipped the script a little bit and let them come up with the movie list for Season 8. And I feel like we should have seen this coming, that there were going to be a couple on the list that they did just to be mean to us.
Mm-hmm.
But just bravo to them.
Yeah, this is 100% personal attack against me.
It is.
And but here's the thing. I'm going to one-up them. And I'm only going to talk about how I enjoyed this movie this entire time.
This will be a very short episode, I think.
Yeah, it wasn't very good.
And we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this week we did a ghost story. And I will do the introduction, and then you can do your fun facts. And then that may be all there is to this one. In 2017, A24 brought us A Ghost Story, and boy are we thankful. This movie was directed by David Lowery and stars Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara in their least challenging roles to date. The film tells the story of a man who dies but returns as a ghost to the house where he was living with his wife when it happened, even though time continues to march on. This movie is considered one of the best films of 2017 by many critics, surprisingly, but Sarah added it to the list for the sole reason of triggering Brice, as it is everything he hates in a movie. A Ghost Story was made on a budget of $100,000 and made about $2 million at the box office. It can currently be streamed on Netflix. I did have one fun fact.
Oh.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
This is not a horror movie. It's also not a good movie.
That's funny because it ties into my facts. Where it's not a horror movie and it's not a good movie. Also, A24? What?
Yeah. So I had actually seen this before. The reason Sarah knew what this one was to put on the list was because we had watched it before, because it was an A24 movie.
Mm. So this was obviously a planned attack.
Yes.
Against me. And, yeah. So, when looking up facts about this movie, obviously I half-assed it. Because, all the facts I was looking up was strictly about the pie that she eats in the film and how it was vegan and this, and the director said it tastes bad but it tastes terrible and all this. It's that's what you got?
Yeah.
That's okay. Basically, the only fact I could find that's, at least I'm trying, David Lowery, who wrote and directed this film, which was obviously a lot of hard work, he collaborated with Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara, however you say it, in another movie called Ain't Them Bodies Saints. Casey Affleck also worked with him in another movie called The Old Man and the Gun.
What is the percentage chance you ever watch either of those movies?
I would probably have a 24-hour marathon of that terrible movie with that one, you know what I'm talking about?
Under the Skin?
Under the Skin. Nah. Yeah. So, nope. Never. I would never... no. It's just not my style.
Yep.
That's honestly it. This was filmed in Irving, Texas, was another thing I read. But, yeah.
So, this was not a horror movie at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it really wasn't a ghost movie either, in the traditional sense of what you would think of with that.
Yeah.
This is an independent drama film that is sort of a philosophical dwelling on mortality.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very slow and very kind of self-indulgent. And I really think it's meant to make you think about your own mortality and like not holding on too tightly to things and whatnot. And so if you go into it like with that mindset and you want that type of movie, maybe you would like it. Mm-hmm. Like one thing that's stood out to me for a while is there's a fantasy football podcaster that I listen to that about once a year will do like a best independent films of this year episode randomly.
Yeah.
And that's turned me on to some really good stuff. Like that's where I heard about the movie Nightcrawler, which I think is awesome. And you should go watch it if you haven't. But this was a movie that was like high on his list for 2017. And I don't get it. I mean, he I think is in his 40s and is single. And so maybe it was like one of those like midlife, like I'm going to reflect on a lot of things and this movie is going to make me think about like life choices and mortality and all that. Like maybe there was like some connection on that front, but just as a movie, man, like you mentioned the pie thing. There is a scene in this movie where you watch a ghost watch a woman eat an entire pie in real time.
Yeah.
That is like a solid 10 minutes.
Well, maybe whatever dummies did, watch the whole 10 minutes. Not this dummy.
Did you fast forward it?
I finished this movie in 45 minutes, dude. Actually, that's generous. About 40. I get it. I got what's going on very early into this film. And, you know what you're getting yourself into when like it starts off and it's like whispering dialogue.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, I just love you. And I just love you. I don't want to ever die. And then they're dead.
Yeah.
And then they show up as a ghost in a white sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And then you know when she says at the beginning, like, I would leave stuff at my house, notes, if I ever went back. And you're like, oh, we're not ever going to know what's on those fucking notes.
Yeah.
Because I know what's happening here.
Yeah.
You're not fooling me, David Lowery.
I had in my notes that I feel like they were both just muttering and not finishing their lines through most of the movie.
Well, yeah. I mean,
like,
the longest...
do you want to, like, go to the... yeah. Maybe. Well,
yeah. The longest dialogue, like, I think a fact in here, the longest dialogue in this is the guy at the bar, or at the party.
Yes.
That's, like, talking about, like, the universe and all that, which is, like, a trippy concept to think about.
He struck me as, like, that older guy that goes to a college party and tries to be, like the OG in the room.
100%.
You know? Yeah.
And it's like, hey, man, what year are you graduating? And he's like, back in 1980.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Several years ago. Like, oh, what are you doing now? Huh.
Living the dream.
Yeah.
Still got those college football ticks.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I will say, here's one thing, besides, that one girl's song, Keisha, whatever her name is, I actually didn't mind the soundtrack.
I put in my notes that the soundtrack to this sounds like it was compiled by someone who thinks that Radiohead and Passion Pit are equally important.
Oh yeah, 100%. However, if a movie is that bad where you enjoy that, or where it makes it seem like it's not that bad, for me, that's a pretty bad deal.
The positive for me was the filming. I thought that a lot of the way the movie was put together, just from like a cinematography perspective, was good. And I thought that scene where he first like sits up in the morgue and then he's walking down the hall and there's like that black rectangle that appears in the wall and all of those lights coming out of it, like framing the ghost. That was the most interesting part of the movie to me, was just like the setup of that scene.
Yeah.
And that's the most positive thing I can say. But on a budget of $100,000, visually, I thought the movie was pretty impressive.
I mean, you give us $100,000, we'll make an actual horror film.
That's true too.
I mean, in their defense, like this, I don't think was ever credited as being a horror.
No.
So that's why I didn't get super mad at the film, because it's not like one of the ones like Under the Skin where they tried to say it's a horror. Like this one was, no, they're not. This is just an individual attack on my, on me, and I get it.
Yeah.
Which is exactly why, I, got her a mug that for Christmas that says "Eat a bag of dicks." This is a war that's going on between your best friend and your wife right now, Daniel. And I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm just saying I'm not going to lose.
Well, I know both of you well enough to know that neither of you are going to lose. So really, I'm the one that loses.
I know.
This is just going to go on and on. But,
No, I mean, here's the thing. If, like, watching this, like, there was a time where I went through like the phase of watching movies kind of similar to this, and I was trying to think off the top of my head which ones, and I couldn't tell you exact, but like it was before Katie, so that was probably like 6 years or 7 years ago. But where I probably would have watched it then, and I probably would have thought like not watching it as a horror, would have thought like there's something more important about this. However, it's difficult to try to find like people say, well, there's really deep meaning to these stories, and it's like I get that. However, there's really deep meanings to a lot of real life stories that are taking place now that like should give you like the motivation to like tell your spouse that you love them, or whatever, like there's that too. Also, like, if you're gonna claim to be a musician, don't have Casey Affleck be the guy.
Right.
Like, that was the most unbelievable thing of the whole thing. I believe that there's probably a ghost behind me right now with a sheet over their head, more than Casey Affleck making that song.
Yeah. There was a lot going on there. Another scene that I had in my notes was in the morgue, where it's after he's died and Rooney is there and the nurse is there, and it's like silent, and then the nurse leaves, and then she says, wait a minute. And then the nurse walks back in and says yes, and then she says, never mind.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then one thing that I found a little frustrating was, so as the movie goes on, the ghost is becoming, it seems like, less tied to a particular time. And so he starts kind of like flashing forward through, the future residents of the house. But it's almost like he's like blackout drunk, so like one minute he'll be looking at one thing and then he turns around and he's in a totally different time with different people. Mm-hmm. And it gets into the future, and then the house gets knocked down and they build this big office building there. And then it's almost like he gets to the end and resets and is in the same area back when the settlers were first coming, to the untamed West. And then, of course, Native Americans come and kill them, because that's the only way Native Americans can be depicted in movies, it seems. But the thing,
I may have missed that. I may have fast forwarded through. No, I was kidding.
Yeah. But the thing that got to me was like, there were some opportunities for like action or suspense or drama, but they always happened like off screen. So like his car wreck, you just got like a flash of him dead in the driver's seat after it had already happened for a very short period
Right.
of time. You only got a picture of the settlers like with the arrows in them on the ground, just briefly, to let you know that that had happened. And so everything that would have been like compelling or creating any of that sense of like discomfort like you want from a horror movie were just completely brushed over. I mean, there was no desire to do anything in the movie other than sort of have this, I guess, like reflective, meditative mood set for you to think about mortality. And I guess that's fine, but I never established any sort of like emotional connection to anything happening in the movie to make that effective for me.
Yeah. So when I was talking about the music, the reason why I think I enjoyed it is because I started reading up, like, so there's one song it's called I Get Overwhelmed, the one that plays a couple times throughout it. And so like then I started reading those lyrics because I was like, I wonder if those lyrics were, like, I wonder if this was wrote for the film or something else. And I started reading the lyrics and like, I actually thought it was kind of an interesting take on them. Where, so basically the song I Get Overwhelmed is by, I guess, a band called Dark Rooms. And it, like, if you do have, like, I feel like it was written by someone who's had anxiety and depression and stuff. And, like, the lyrics kind of reflect that, even though, like, it's just short messages throughout, or, like, short, like, lyrics throughout it. But it also has cuss words in it, which you know me.
Yeah.
I love songs that have cuss words in it.
Okay.
So that's why, yeah. But basically, like, through 3/4 of the song, it says, like, you know, are you running late? Did you sleep too much? All the awful dream, you know, just like going through it saying you, and then at the end, towards the end, one of the lyrics is, but we know you as I, and I get overwhelmed. Can't sleep at night, can't convince myself. Like, oh, I bet this guy was having a really rough time, and legit, like, that's like, I feel like that was an honest lyric of like stress and not just you know, just like trying to make a really famous song. Yeah. That's what, so I was reading about that probably during the Pioneer scene.
Yeah. What's funny to me is I think we have officially said more now about the soundtrack than we have about the movie.
Yeah. 100%. That was my plan.
There's more worth talking about in it. Yeah.
That was my plan. I do like the idea though of making, I had the idea of making a horror movie. So like, and it came from, was it, Truth or Dare that we watched where it was Truth or Dare. And I thought it'd be great to write like a horror movie from the perspective of the friend who didn't go on the trip. And that's just hanging out and seeing all the stuff go down. Like thinking it would be funny, like, you know, like, hey, we're going to Cancun. You want to go? It's like, nah, man, I got to work, whatever. And then they come back and next thing you know, everything's crazy. And it's just like his perspective. Tying that into this, I like the idea of thinking like, oh, like that would be a poltergeist, him throwing the plates and cups and stuff like that. Like you see like that actually happening from the ghost itself, which I don't know if I've really seen before. Like you obviously have seen that, you know, done, but have you seen the ghost doing it? It's like, that's actually kind of interesting.
Yeah. And I think the visuals of the ghost were kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I saw the preview for it, I was like, this could actually be pretty legit. Like I think everything visually about this was very well done.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, I wish I could take like the same elements and just make a better movie. I had in my notes, and I think this is pretty much the best summary I could write of this, is that this movie feels like this movie feels like a collection of scenes that would have been edited out of a good movie.
So what I was thinking of earlier when I was saying it was Terrence Malick. Those films, that's who this reminded me of. Was
I can
Terrence
see that
Malick's
for
film.
sure.
Yeah. And I remember back in my naive days, we went and watched A New World with my brother and Terry and, like a couple of bros, you know, and, we went and watched it because the preview for it looked really intense. Like there was going to be fighting between like the settlers and Native Americans. And it was going to be real. And like we went, and that was a Terrence Malick film.
Yeah.
Which is, if anyone knows about Terrence Malick, like that's not like,
yep.
It's not his style. But anyway, that's exactly what I kind of thought of with this. And, you know, touche to your wife. I've known about this if people listen this season and have heard, like I've dropped like a couple hints about this film, because we watched the previews for him before we decided, and I just knew, and I was like, but like you said, like I'm like the ghost, and like I like that idea. I was just like, that's the classic what you see with like cartoon ghosts and stuff. Like that's just what you look at, and it's like, oh, that's really cool. But at the same time, I'm not mad at this film because they're not saying they're horror. You know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is not something I would recommend to someone looking for a horror movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It would be funny though if like one day people are like, give us a list of your all-time favorite, and we just tell them this one, just to mess with them.
We tell them this, Under the Skin, and just all of them.
Yeah.
And then we just send them a link to Esquire's.
Oh yeah. Could not recommend this list any better.
Yeah. Yep. That's about all we got.
Let me say this too. If you're gonna have a ghost costume, and you're gonna have an actor obviously playing under that ghost costume, like there was a scene where the ghost was grabbing like something, like a cup or something in a cabinet, and the sun's shining through, and you literally see the arm and the t-shirt, like like if you're gonna do that, like I get that you're on small budget, but like at least like line the sheet with like black or something that, so you don't have to, like that's just lazy, and you're already making a bad movie, and now you're one-upping it by like, we see the guy under it. Like that's not how this works. Like why would he be wearing a t-shirt if anything? Yeah. But anyway, that's just lazy on their part.
Do you think it was Casey Affleck the whole time?
I think it actually was. Because
but it definitely didn't have to be, you know?
No, and some of the facts, about this was saying like they had to build him like a special suit because like a king size sheet was too big for it, or was too small, like not long enough and stuff. So like, yeah, but I think it actually was. I mean, it's stupid enough to have him like you could have had this movie made for $25,000 if you didn't have him.
Well, that's what I was thinking. A lot of it, you could have just put the thing on a broom handle and propped it up in the background because it wasn't like he was moving around or doing anything. So,
put on a Roomba or something.
One of those oscillating fans.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, well, touche.
Yep. This one's over. Nowhere to go but up.
Yeah.
And next week we'll be doing The Turning, which I know nothing about, but I am optimistic just because it's definitely not this movie.
Yeah. I don't know if I remember that one. But cool. All right. See you guys later.
And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.